Morning, everyone. Morning. Are we excited? Are we excited? You look excited. I'm excited. First of all, can I just say, you guys are a bunch of legends. Ubers, rain, taxis, coats, umbrellas. I feel like we're hosting this showcase in Dublin, like it's, you know. So I'm excited. Let me tell you why I'm excited. I'm excited because this is our first speaker showcase, and we've been building as a business towards this for the last, I'd say, 12 to 18 months, and the fact that it's now here, very excited, very, very excited. We're here in this awesome venue, and we're in our beautiful, rainy city of all days, the last 2 months, sunshine, I'd say. And we've got a room full of wonderful clients. A lot of you we've been working with for the last 2, 3, 4 years. And some of you we've literally just met a few minutes ago for the first time. And of course, we've got 4 pretty cool speakers as well to hear from as well this morning. So a lot to be excited about. I'm going to pretend like I've done this before. I do want to say though, for me to be on this stage this morning, it's a real privilege. You know, like I said before, we've been on a bit of a journey. A lot of you have come on this journey with us. So this wouldn't have happened without your support. This morning is more for you than it is about us. So I just want to say a big thank you to everyone for being here so early, being committed, and for the support we've had in the last couple of years. Thanks so much for that. However, being on this stage this morning also means that I'm the master of ceremonies. The only problem is I'm not an MC. I'm not a professional MC. I'm not even an unprofessional MC. But my thinking was, if I host the showcase and I'm a disaster, then the speaker's going to look even better. So that was my thinking. So Mykel, Sam, Rhi, Paul, you can thank me later. No, my pleasure, my pleasure. And we've also got one of Australia's most booked MCs here today, Andrew Klein, who said to me outside he feels like he's coming to my bar mitzvah because it's our first showcase. We've got an action-packed morning, so the quick housekeeping. If the bathroom, should you need them, just out the door on the right, just next to Beyonce's dress, you can't miss it. There's the bathrooms. What else? Tea, coffee, available throughout. Please help yourself. Mobile phones, switch them to silent. If you haven't done so already, we're an intimate little gathering, so you don't want to be that person. But while you do have your phones, if you could follow us on social media, we would love it. We're on Instagram and Facebook, and we're often posting when we're at conferences of events and speakers, and we try to make it as relevant to people in events as possible. What else do we have? Yes, feedback forms. So you'll see on your chairs feedback forms. If you could fill them throughout the morning, whether it's great, whether it's not so great, about the speakers, about the showcase, about events and conferences in general, the content that you want to see, it's just so important for us to see, to know what you think. We've got a few little gifts, which I was meant to bring on stage. I'll show them to you later on, but a bit to incentivize you guys to fill out the feedback forms. We'll collect them at the end. We've got 3 gifts. There's about 80 people here, so you've got 7% chance of winning something. So, cool. So before we introduce our first speaker, I was hoping I'd just take a few minutes just to share the story of Inspire and my story of how I got in the industry and a little bit about where we want to go. So you know, sometimes when you get asked that question about what you do or how you get in, like if I'm in an Uber and someone says, oh, so what do you do for a living? Or someone who's not in events and conference space, and I tell them what I do, and then they'll say, oh, really? I didn't know that was a job. Yeah, I'll say, yeah, it is a job. It's a great job. Yeah. I represent speakers, I represent MCs, and absolutely love it. I started Inspire about 5 years ago, but I first got into the industry about 20 years ago. I was in my last year at university, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I went to an event, and it was at the Horden Pavilion, and it was a 2-day event, and there was lots of speakers on stage, and you know, this was before YouTube, and I had no idea anything like this existed. And you know that expression when someone drank the Kool-Aid? Well, I sculled the Kool-Aid. Like the speakers, the AV, the registration, the merchandise, the lot. I was just like, this is my space. This is me. This is what I want to do. So the week after the event, I decided, okay, I'm going to call that company that put on the event, and I'm going to get a job with them. So I rang them up, asked to be put through to the manager, got their voicemail, left them a voicemail, told them who I was, told them I wanted a job, and left my details to call me back. No reply. So I rang him again the next week, and then the next week, and then the next week, still no reply. So then I thought to myself, I said, I know what I'll do. I'll send a box of chocolates with my CV on top, and I wrapped it in a box and nice bow and everything like that. And I sent it to their office, and I thought, this will make me stand out. I'll definitely get a call back. Sent it away, nothing. Ringing, didn't hear a word. So then I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll go down to their office. I'll go see them. That's what you do. This is my first job. I didn't know any different. So I go down to their office in Glebe on Wentworth Point Road. I walk in and I see the receptionist, and she goes and gets the manager, and the manager comes out, and the manager's like, Keith, what are you doing here? He knew who I was, a stalker. Stalking before Facebook. And it existed. So anyway, he goes, what do you want? I said, I want a job. And he said, we don't have any positions available. I said, well, I'd like an interview. And he said, okay. So we go into a meeting room. 20 minutes later, I had a job. I started the following Monday. Yeah. So the following Monday, there I am sitting in a bullpen with 12 other people. We all had our headsets on. We'd ring people off a call sheet, and we'd ask them if they wanted to buy tickets to see speakers like Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, Dr. Deepak Chopra, Tony Robbins, Richard Branson, so speakers like that. And I'll never forget, we'd ring them there, and had the headset on, big thick thing, and I was 19. I looked 15. I definitely looked 15 because the director came in one day. She worked part-time and said, "What are we doing hiring kids?" True story. And anyway, I'll never forget. The first person I rang a couple of people. And it went to their voicemail, and then I eventually got through to someone, and I never forget, as soon as they answered the phone and said hello, I just shut myself and hung up. So anyway, long story short, 20 years later, and with a little bit more confidence, I've seen thousands of speakers at this stage. I've been to countless conferences, and I still have the same passion and enthusiasm for the industry and for what I do today as what I did back then. I just don't hang up on anyone anymore. So Inspire, why do we exist? We only exist for one reason. That's to help make events and conferences better, and specifically to try and help a lot of your events and conferences better. And there's only two parts to our business. The first part is our recommendations. So we know that there's a world of speakers out there. So finding a speaker for your conference event, that's not a difficult thing to do. But when you start to put in certain parameters in place, it becomes more difficult. So we all know the usual parameters, such as the theme, the subject of the conference, like resilience and future-proofing and trust are popular in the last year. The parameter of your audience, are they old, young, male, female, national, local? Who have they seen? Who did they see last year and loved? Who did they see 2 years ago and hated? Are they a lively, passionate bunch, or are they a pessimistic, cynical mob? So they're and then of course is the budget. So they're the normal parameters that we work in. But there's other parameters as well that we have to work in as well, particularly if you do a lot of conference and events. There's the parameter that we work in. It's never been harder to impress an audience than it is today. Like in some industries, have been just spoiled with people that they've heard from. If you're doing conferences all the time, it's difficult to have that wow factor sometimes for your conference or event. The other parameter is it's a busy marketplace. It's not a good marketplace for speakers. It's a busy one. It's now an aspiration for some people to become a speaker. And this is before they've got content to share or a story to tell. And we must get approached by 15, 20 times a month from people wanting for us to represent them, to put them on the website, to be on the books, and to put them in front of you. And 95% of the time, they're nowhere near good enough to put in front of you for your conferences. And they probably, most of the time, 90, 85% of the time, they probably never will get to that level. So it's a busy marketplace. Everyone's an expert. Everyone's written a book. You never read about testimonial. And then the last parameter as well is that, particularly if you do a lot of conference and events, is that we do work in Australia in a limited market, relatively speaking to some of like the US or the UK. So it can seem like most of the work goes to, I'd say, the top 80 to 100 speakers. So we really do need to be, which is what we stand for. We need to creatively match speakers to the events, and that involves a lot of search. So that's what we're about. The second part of the business is service. Just quickly, we know we're in events. Events, the devil is in the detail. And we, I forgot that last point. Yeah, that's the point. So, which is one of our values over here, which is flexibility. Sometimes things change, we deal with it. We know we work in the people business, and sometimes people don't do things what we want them to do. So the big part of what we do is the flexibility. Cool. So our vision is to be the speakers agency that the industry is both excited about and proud of, okay? And we've done a couple of things just recently, which have started to get this process. Nearly finished. Paul's coming soon. So if we can just play that video, please, Tom. So we've recently, as most of you will know, we've rebranded, we've launched a new website. And when we did it, we specifically wanted that speaker page. My thinking was, when you're consuming speaker information, it's got to be an easy and fun experience. There's someone in the room today who asked a few months ago, when do you review your speakers for your conference? And she said, I do it at home, at night, after the kids have gone to bed. I'm looking for her now. With the laptop on my lap, glass of wine, and the TV on. So if that's when you're consuming this information, it's got to be easy. So we want to make it like nearly fun. All their videos, testimonials, everything you would want in an easy, we wanted an industry best website, and we think we've come close to doing that. We've also got a booking platform in the back end, we will now send you your proposal. So you'll log in, your own unique login, you'll see the speakers there. Yes, I'm interested, no, I'm not. You can check out all in one go, their bios, their videos, their testimonials. You can leave comments down the bottom here, which I've done myself. If you can't read it, it says, "Hi Keith, these speakers are amazing. Thanks, you are the best." So you send the response, and then once we decide once we select the speaker, that becomes a live job, and then you'll have everything you would want to find: the flights, the grant transfers, the venue address, the contracts. So then you can click on, it's an e-contract, so you'll click on there. If you want the contract, you can download it for a copy for yourself. The invoices, if you ever need them, we can email this to you as well. But then you can go in, there's the download the high-res images, the speaker topics, the introduction, the AV requirements. So we want that to be as seamless as a process for you as possible. That's our goal. So we're going to start to use that in the coming weeks. The only work you'll need to do is the very first time you get a booking is you'll just have to log in and create your own password, just save it, and then hopefully that becomes as easy as possible. So, last point, that's great, but by far the most important ingredient for us to get it right is our conversations with you. We're all about intimacy, you know, and you can sort of tell in this room, and if you've worked with us, and when we have really good conversations with you, I think sometimes event managers, people in events underestimate their role. You know, it's your wealth of knowledge that really sort of helps us sometimes get it right. You know your committee, you know your decision makers, you know your audience better than us. So I nearly refuse to work off a brief just from an email alone. But those conversations, that's the most important ingredient. Enough about me. Let's talk about you. No, let's introduce our first speaker this morning. Our first speaker this morning is Mr. Paul Taylor. He's not the first speaker because he's also Irish. He's the first speaker because he's a really good way to start the morning, to be honest. I first met Paul a couple of years ago, and when I've seen him speak, I've found his research and his stories riveting, okay? You don't always get the both together. And I'm trying not to do the reading off the script thing, but I sort of have to for Paul. This is a mouthful. I'm going to do it fast. So Paul is a former British Royal Navy aircrew officer, an exercise psychologist, a nutritionist, and neuroscientist, and the affiliate professor at the University of San Francisco. He's an extensive background in health and fitness, and he's a proven track record in leadership, management, and dealing in high-pressure situations through his former roles as an airborne anti-submarine warfare officer and a helicopter search and rescue crew member with the Royal Navy Armed Fleet, and has undergone rigorous combat survival and resistance to interrogation training. Oh, I've lost my line. Here we go. And all right, so in 2010 and 2015, Paul was voted the Australian Fitness Industry Presenter of the Year. He also practiced what he preaches about resilience training, became a professional boxer. Please welcome the man who will go down in history as the first speaker at an Inspire Speaker Showcase, Mr. Paul Taylor.
So guys, morning. Now I've got 20 minutes to do a 30-minute talk, and I'm aware it is still pre-8 o'clock, and you probably haven't had your dose of coffee yet. So I just need to make sure everybody's brain is awake and engaged. So can everybody copy me? that should be your right hand that's out. How many people have got their left hand out? Yeah, we always get a couple. Now, with your left hand, I want you to point your finger at me with your thumb alongside. So you should have one thumb up, one finger there. Now, all I want you to do is just engage your brain and switch. And back, and again, and again, and again. And why is your brain not awake? Cool. Okay, so since I left the armed forces, I turned into a bit of a geek. So I'm what I call a pracademic. So I like to take the academic research and I like to make it real and practical, so stuff that we can do on a daily basis. But I want to start with the problem statement. So the last Australian psychological survey in Australia showed that at this stage, 1 in 3 Australians suffer significant amounts of distress in their lives, and at any point, about a quarter have above normal levels of anxiety and moderate to severe depression. Yet we've never had it so good. So clearly, something is wrong with modern life, and I think a lot of it is down to this. This is basically what your genome is wired for. And one of my favorite research quotes, probably my favorite, in any research journal I've ever read, was from the Journal of Applied Physiology in 2002 by a researcher called Frank Booth, who talked about the human genome. And in it, he said, the human genome has not changed in over 45,000 years. The current human genome requires and expects us to be highly physically active for normal functioning, right? But we've created an environment where we sit on our arses most of the day, right? We also have a stress response system that has been beautifully honed over 2 million years to certain threats, like 3 minutes of screaming terror on the African savannah when you're being chased by a lion, and then longer-term stresses such as a famine. But now, with modern life, we've created a whole host of novel stressors that switch on what is supposed to be emergency systems at low level for long periods of time. And when that happens, bad juju happens, right? So just want to show, can you just wind that right back to the start on that? No, the video. If you click on the video, right, go there, just pull the slider back to the start. That's it, beautiful, right, okay. Let's just see if anybody kind of recognizes this, had a day like this at all. Anybody? Okay. So guys, what I want to do in the time that I've got remaining is I want to give you guys some practical things that you can do to basically improve how you operate physically and mentally, but also your cognitive function. So I'm going to go through a number of different things. And really, I'm a big fan of rituals and of bookend rituals, right? So we have much more control over the bookends of our day, right? The start and the end of our day. So it's actually setting up really good rituals so that we can perform well. And if you want to have an awesome tomorrow starts with tonight. And it starts with certain practices around sleep hygiene. Now, there's a whole heap of stuff, but one of the most important things, I think, particularly in today's world, is having a digital sunset. So getting rid of all of the screens, because if you interact with the screen within an hour of going to bed, melatonin, your sleep hormone, drops by over 20%. If you interact within half an hour of going to bed, your melatonin drops by 30%. That means you're less likely to get to sleep, and you're more likely to wake up with disturbed sleep. And what we know is if you have bad sleep, you are more stress responsive the next day. Everybody gets that, right? You're tetchy, right? But you're not aware of this stuff. And the other thing that happens is ghrelin, your hunger hormone, is actually higher the next day. So you crave food, more food, and because cortisol is higher, you crave sugary, fatty, and salty food. Leptin is the thing in your brain that governs voluntary physical activity. So after a bad night's sleep, you're more likely to sit on your arse all day long. You're less likely to do a workout. Then you're less able to handle the stresses of the day. Then you're more likely to eat shit and drink alcohol. Then you're more likely to have a crap night's sleep, right? And then the whole day recycles. So having those rituals around sleep is really important because we know there's a bi-directional relationship between sleep and anxiety and depression. Anybody get teenagers? Anybody old enough to have teenagers? Teenagers who bring a device into their bedrooms sleep on average 1 to 1.5 hours less than their peers, and they have double the risk of mental health issues, right? But we know that sleep in and of itself is a massive contributor. Poor sleep is a massive contributor to mental health issues. So then we talk about the next morning, because if you had good sleep, then you're more likely to wake up with good energy. Who here has done any form of exercise this morning? I know it's an early start. Okay, so there's a couple of us in the room. Put your hand up, those who've done exercise, keep it up. So those who are Hands down, just look around at the people with their hands up. And I've got my hand up because their brains are functioning better than your brains today, right? So guys, there is so much research around this that I can now say unequivocally that if you do not currently engage in regular, vigorous physical activity, there is not a snowball's chance in hell that your brain is functioning optimally. You might have a very good brain, but it cannot function on an optimal level without regular, vigorous physical activity. We know there are literally hundreds of research papers showing the impact of exercise on cognitive abilities, and especially executive functions. They're the more complex actions of your brain. Exercise also creates all the conditions necessary for neuroplasticity, the ability for your brain to adapt, which is really important in today's fast-changing world, and is actually the best protection against Alzheimer's disease. We also know that exercise is hugely important for your mood and your well-being. Now, you guys know this stuff, right? Why is exercise important for your mood? What does it do? Endorphins, right? They're the sexy chemicals that get all the plaudits. Tell you what, if I was a monoamine, I'd be really pissed off and jealous about endorphins, right? Monoamines are also released. Serotonin, who's out of that? Important for mood and sleep. Dopamine, important for pleasure and reward, but also motivation and goal-directed behavior. And noradrenaline, sometimes called norepinephrine, is another important mood-enhancing chemical. All of these are released when we exercise, and there are a number of neurochemical pathways that are released when we exercise that actually make our brains function really, really well. And we know, Frank Booth showed nearly 15 years ago, that exercise actually controls your gene expression. Every time you exercise, there's what we call a triphasic response of your genes that is triggered by stress response genes. So it's the stress of exercise that actually drives all the good stuff, right? And this is why high-intensity interval training is actually much better for you, because there's a bigger release of these stress response genes. They then trigger release of a whole heap of metabolic priority genes that make your ecosystem function better. And then they trigger the release of what's called mitochondrial enzyme genes. Your mitochondria are basically like the batteries of your cells. When you get damaged mitochondria, you get premature aging and disease. And we now know that higher intensity exercise actually drives what's called mitochondrial biogenesis, right? Which is a big word for this time in the morning, but that basically means brand spanking new batteries for your cells, right? So, have I been convincing enough about exercise? Anybody? I'm going to give you guys a link to an 8-minute workout that is body weight. So very little time. You don't need any equipment. You need very little space, about this much. If you're traveling, you're in a hotel room. If you've got your exercise gear, you can do it in your undies. You can stick it in your undies on your head and do it if you want. But the only problem is that I've now removed all of your excuses for not exercising, right? Okay, so let me try something a little bit more left field. It's always a bit of a groan with this one. Who has them? Cold showers regularly. Who has them regularly? Okay. So those who don't have cold showers, why not? Because it's cold, you dickhead. Why are you even asking, right? Well, it turns out there's really good reasons why we should have cold showers. This is a randomized control trial showing that people who had 30 seconds of a cold shower at the end of their normal shower, at the end of the year, had a 30% reduction in sickness and absenteeism, right? So you show me a workplace health intervention that is that successful. Now, before I get into why, I want to introduce you to Oscar. So he's my little dude, right? Now, we were just back from Bali. He doesn't normally wear that shit in his hair. But the reason he looks like that is he's about 3 seconds into a freezing cold shower. And before you phone Child Protection Services, the reason he's in a freezing cold shower is that I read the research and I'd said, Jesus, this is compelling. I've got to do this. So I decided to have my cold shower. And so I said, okay, it's 30 seconds. And I kind of whooshed out, right? And I said, I'll do 15 seconds. I'll just get started. So Oscar walked in just as I had turned the shower to cold. He walked into the bathroom. And I'm in the shower going, and he kind of comes in and he goes, what are you doing, Dad? I'm like, I'm having a cold shower, mate. And he's like, okay, what are you doing that for? And I couldn't think of anything. I just said, because it makes you tough, buddy. And he went, really? I'm like, yeah. And then I finished, and he looked at me and said, how long did you do, Dad? I said, I did 15 seconds, mate. He said, get out. I'm going to kick your ass, right? So when he got, and I had my phone because I was timing myself, and I thought, I know what's going to happen. So I slapped it to cold, and then I took a photo. This is him about 3 seconds in. This is Oscar 30 seconds into his freezing cold shower, doing something called box breathing, which is a technique that I taught him, but never thought to use. And he got to 30 seconds, and I said, mate, that's 30 seconds, and he stopped the shower, and he walked out like this. Loser. So we started a little competition anyway, but the point is, when you have a cold shower, norepinephrine or noradrenaline, that mood-enhancing chemical, is released in your brain, which is why it makes you feel really good, right? Stress response proteins, the same ones that are released during exercise, are released in a cold shower, right? Not only the heat shock proteins, but also cold shock proteins, which have synergistic and beneficial effects, right? We know that your immune system gets upregulated, which is why these people had less sickness. And in fact, when they study cold water swimmers, those guys who swim all year round, they had better cardiovascular function, better immune function, and they lived longer than age-matched controls who do similar amounts of exercise but not in the cold. So there's something about the cold. And I'm a massive fan of the Stoic philosophers, and Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, talked 2,000 years ago about, he wrote in his meditations book about the benefits of cold water bathing and vigorous exercise. And he said everybody should do cold water bathing and vigorous exercise because they develop character. What he was really talking about was resilience. And he says it develops character that you need for when you have to overcome challenges. So this is about enhancing cellular resilience. So who here is going to have a cold shower tomorrow morning? Right? It's Sydney. It's not really cold. It's lukewarm, right? Now, you're all on camera with your hands up, so make sure you deliver. Okay. So the next one, this is box breathing. Anybody familiar with box breathing? This is a technique used by US Special Forces when they're on patrol to control their arousal and put their brains in an optimal state. Now, you Special Forces guys do not do fluffy bullshit, right? This is basically what's called bottom-up control of your vagus nerve. When you breathe in this pattern, it actually stimulates your vagus nerve from the bottom up, and we now know it reduces your blood pressure, reduces your heart rate, and brings your brain out of a stress state. So all you do is when you're stressed is just do box breathing. Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, and hold for 4. And having things like a trigger, like every time you see a red light, just go do some box breathing for a minute. All the executives I work with, I teach them at every hour, minimum, 30 seconds of exercise to get blood flow and oxygen to your brain, and then sit down and do box breathing for 1 to 2 minutes. It's like taking your brain out and plugging it into the wall for a recharge. Okay, next one. I got to talk here a little bit about the voices in your head. Everybody know what I'm talking about? Yep. Right, now before we get into the voices in your head, I'd like everybody to close your eyes and picture a lemon for me, right? I want you to picture a lemon in your mind's eye. So describe the lemon for me. Come on, shout it out. Yellow. So it's yellow. What else? It's oval shaped. What else? Dimply skin. What else? Come on. Use it. Now describe it using non-visual descriptors. So it's sour, isn't it, right? It's citrusy and it's sour. Okay, open your eyes. I'm going to use it. I've got a lemon. And I'm going to use it to give you an important lesson around your interactions every single day, right? Oh, I'm jumping Jesus. Who said it was sour? Now, fucking hell. Anybody notice that they're salivating a little bit? Why the fuck are you salivating? I'm eating a lemon. Now, let me get rid of this. If you're not salivating, it could be one of 3 reasons. Number 1, you could be autistic. Number 2, you could be a sociopath. Or you could be sitting daydreaming about sex. Or potentially all of the above. This is about a class of neurons discovered in 1997 called mirror neurons. And basically what happens is when you watch somebody do an action, the neurons that fire in their brain to help them do the action fire in your brain too. But our mirror neuron system is much more strongly activated when you watch somebody express an emotion. So they are the neurons that are responsible for empathy. Autistic people have atypical mirror neuron systems. Sociopaths have a completely dysfunctional mirror neuron system, which is why they feel no empathy. But the take-home for this is that your emotional state on a daily basis influences the brain chemistry of every single person around you. So this is about choosing which version of you shows up. So when we talk about these voices in our heads, it's about creating characters. So everybody can relate to a version of them that's a little bit shit. You know that version of you, right? And think about that version of you and what life is like when that version of you is in control, right? And it's things like, what do they say? What do they say when they're faced with a challenge? These sorts of things, right? And we all have a version of us that is awesome. And when the awesome version of us is in control, what's life like, right? And this is really about choosing which version of you is in control. And so I like to create characters for the negative you and the awesome you, right? And my awesome me is called Kev, named after these three people. The girl on the left, Katie Taylor, Irish boxer, probably Ireland's best sportswoman. She just unified all the titles at the weekend. E stands for Ernst Shackleton. Anybody familiar with him? Probably the greatest story of survival through leadership there's ever been. And the last guy, the V, stands for Viktor Frankl. He was a Jewish psychiatrist, a professor at Vienna University in the Second World War. And he was a Jew, and he got captured by the Nazis, and he got taken to Auschwitz. And the only reason he got through Auschwitz was at his lowest ebb, the words of Friedrich Nietzsche came to him. He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. And he realized at that point his entire purpose in life was to get captured by the Nazis and to be sent to Auschwitz, so that he could actually survive Auschwitz and create some good out of the horrors of what the Nazis did. Because he said to himself, if I don't survive, all of my friends will have died for nothing. All of these people will have died for nothing. I have a skill set that I could possibly create some good. So he created a new branch of therapy in his head in Auschwitz called logotherapy. And when he got out, he published his manuscript on it. And one of the key tenets of logotherapy is that he realized in Auschwitz, man can take everything from you. All of your dignity, your pride, your belongings, your loved ones can take everything from you but one thing. And he called it the last of human freedoms. Your ability to choose how you react to your circumstances, to choose your own attitude, to choose your own way. So he would be very supportive of the fact that every day we get to choose who's in control. What version of you is in control. And this is an awesome thing to do with your kids. I did it with my kids, and Oscar, his negative person is called Derek, but look what Derek's saying. Derek is saying, I will crush the good ones, and I will be the king of Oscar's head. How cool is that shit? That's what happens. If you let that negative version of you be in control, it crushes the good version of you, and it becomes the king of your head. Now, the last little one I've got to talk about, so this is really about getting your game face on, right? Every morning, just get your game face on. The last thing, just because of time, is gratitude. And just having that little morning ritual of gratitude. People who regularly practice gratitude have more positive emotions. They've got higher levels of well-being. They've more hope and optimism for the future. They're more empathetic. They're more forgiving of people who wrong them. They're less depressed. They're less anxious. They're less materialist. And they're less envious. Anybody like all that? That shit's free. Completely free. 2 minutes a day is all it takes. And if you've got a family, doing it with your family is a really cool thing to do. Just sitting around the dinner table. Okay, so that's kind of all I got, but I've got to leave you with the bad news. Now, I'm breaking all the rules as a public speaker. This is the bit where I'm supposed to create a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling between me and you, and emotional connection and all that horse shit, right? I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm a realist. And the realist in me tells me I've got to give you the bad news because it's real. And the bad news is that no one is coming. Ever. Seriously. No one's coming to sort your shit out. They're just not. No one's coming to get you in shape, to make you awesome, to make you a role model for your kids, to bring your career to the next level, or to sort your head out. They're just not coming. This is all about you and the choices that you make every day. So the last word goes to Morpheus. And do you choose the blue pill of cruising through life the way you have, but probably not achieving your true goals? Or do you swallow the red pill and go down the rabbit hole and see what happens if you decide to get up tomorrow morning, do a little workout, have a cold shower, get your game face on before you come into work, do a bit of gratitude ritual, and a digital detox in the evening. And particularly the most important time to get your game face on is when you come home. When you come home this evening, just before you walk in the house, just say to yourself, what version of me do my partner, spouse, little kids want to see walk in the house? And just get your game face on. Thank you.
Thanks, Philip. Thanks, Paul. Have a cold shower. Make your way to an Inspire Speaker Showcase in the morning. It's the same thing. Just resilience and grit. That's this room. Cool. Our next speaker is Rhiannon Tuntevski. I've known Rhiannon for years, and I've always struggled with that last name. So I first saw Rhi speak around 3 years ago, and she gave a brilliant presentation on engaging millennials. And the first thing that she said in her presentation I thought was quite poignant, which was, why is it that we always have conversations about how to engage younger people, but we're never inviting them into the conversation? And from a speaker point of view, we often book and engage speakers on this topic who've written books and are experts, but they're much older. So Rhi's talk has developed somewhat recently because she is now, given that she's recently works at UTS on the Faculty of Transdisciplinary Innovation, which is a future-focused faculty disrupting the model university. So here to speak to us today about millennials, robots, and work. Oh my. Please welcome Rhiannon Tuntevski.
Thanks, everyone. This is why we need to have a chat today. See, people are putting videos like this out there, giving young folk like me a bad name, and I need to get up and defend us, because I'm not going to stand here and tell you that we're great and that we're the best and that we don't have our fair share of challenges. But all I am going to say is that we are the first generation that has had to deal with social media trolling just because of how old we are. And it's going to be fun. Now, you thought that you had, a task ahead of you with Paul fitting 30 minutes of content into 20. Well, today, the future is coming fast, and we're going 40 minutes of content into 20. So strap yourselves in. We're going to run fast. It means that I'm not as funny as normal because, the anecdotes and the stories kind of have to get thrown to the wayside, but bear with me. I promise that there will be some fun stuff ahead. Hello, I'm Rhi, and rather than introducing myself, I thought I would ask my best friends what I should tell you about myself. They think my brain is weird. Me too. I drink almond lattes. I like trying to fix things before asking for help to then try and fix things. I like words. Etymology is cool. I pat every dog I see. My favourite socks have avocados on them, and I have heaps of houseplants, and I also have a really loud laugh. Thanks, Dad. Day to day, I work for the University of Technology, Sydney, in the Faculty of Transdisciplinary Innovation. It's a new faculty for actually any university in the Southern Hemisphere, and it's the first time in over 20 years that a university has created a new faculty. So this concept of transdisciplinary innovation, huge words, I get it, you don't have to follow it closely, but basically what we're doing is looking at the future of work and working out, if we backcast that, what do we need to be teaching students now, and how does university need to change now to make sure that we're ready for the future of work and that we're sending young people out into the world who are ready to create that future with you. Now, in my specific seat, I sit in between the university and industry and bring people together to make magic. And it's super fun. There's never a dull moment when you're talking about robots, artificial intelligence, ethics. What does it mean to be a human? They're the kinds of things that we're exploring day to day. And so we're going to bring a little bit of that into today. Over the next 20 or so minutes, we're going to talk a little bit about the trends that millennials are pushing into the workforce. What are some of the ways that we're engaging with work, and how is that going to change the future of work? We're going to talk a little bit about some of those really tangible future trends, so artificial intelligence, machine learning, how does this all play out for your business? And I'm going to leave you with 3 succinct points because I've learnt my lesson about how to be a good speaker, and leave you with 3 things you can remember. Practical things that you can take back into your day-to-day about how do we prepare ourselves for the future of work. Because the 4th Industrial Revolution is here. It's not a concept any longer. Our advancement and the way that our work is changing is exponential. We're not crawling anymore. It is changing so quick. It's actually changing so fast that scarily, a university degree from beginning to end kind of needs to be fundamentally different. What you started to study and the way that you implement that sometimes will be leaps and bounds apart. So we don't have the luxury of time, but what we do have is the luxury of some really incredible technology and a period of time where we're open to experimenting. So let's dive straight in. The first thing we're going to jump into is, oh yeah, my favourite tweet, millennials and a young person you don't like. The way that millennials are dictating the way we engage with work. And there's 3 big trends that I want you to take away from today. It's your purpose, the way you interact with your people, and how you approach progress. See, when it comes to purpose, it's no longer a luxury for your business to be able to define and really cleverly articulate the human-centered reason that you exist. Now, every organisation, we exist for people, right? And that's what about life we enjoy. We enjoy serving the people around us. We engage connecting with the people around us. And one of the things that a few years ago the Deloitte Millennial Survey brought up is that we're just not impressed by big business anymore just because it's big. But we're really looking at how am I going to impact the lives of people, both around me and the people within the sphere of your business, by coming and investing in your workplace, your mission, and your values. And when we talk about values, these are some of the things that we're looking at. We're really looking to every corner of your business and saying holistically, why do you exist? And what mission am I investing in? We're spending more time at work than we are at home. So what am I investing in, and what am I helping you to do by bringing my uniqueness to the table? A couple of brands that are doing this really well are brands that you will know, like Thank You Water. I still remember popping into the servo a couple of years ago and seeing this new weird bottled water with a QR code on the side. And I remember having to download a QR reader being like, what the hell is this? Like, what are you making me do? But you scan it and it's like, hey, you bought a bottle of water and you've helped dig a well in Africa. And I was like, this is great. Now, there's ethics around buying a bottle of water, but let's park that for another time. But if you're going to buy a bottle of water, you've now got the opportunity to make a choice about which water you buy and which purpose you're investing in. Another one that I like is Atlassian. When you go to their website and you take a look at Atlassian's employment page, for those that don't know, Atlassian is like the darling of Australian startups, like small software development. Now they're massive. They're such great ambassadors for the kind of businesses that we can cultivate in Australia. But when you go there, they have their values right up on the screen for you. You know exactly what you're buying into. You know exactly what you're contributing to. And when you walk into their office, they're painted up on the walls. So now is a really good time, if you haven't already, to think about how are we talking about what we're on about. Are we really transparent with it? Are we making it kind of fun? Are we putting it everywhere for people to see? Not just our young people, but our staff in general. Do they know what we're on about, and are they committed to that? The next trend we're going to take a quick look at is how you're engaging with people. Again, the Deloitte Millennial Survey, that's a publicly available survey as well. Heaps of young people from all around the world fill that in, and there's some really incredible insights. But we're judging the performance of a business not just on its bottom line, but on what it does and how it treats its people. And I feel like in some ways I'm just repeating everything I've just told you. We're looking at the way your business interacts with the world and how it treats its people, not just from a staffing point of view. We're not just talking about, do I get free breakfast and a gym membership when I come and work for you? But, are you making ethical choices in your supply chain? And are you proud of that? Or if you're not, is there some kind of project on the go to inspect those things closer? When we try and quantify some of this, these are some of the things that young people are really looking at when they're looking at taking a job with a place. And we're not just talking about these as kind of nice to haves either. There's about 55% of young people that say they've gotten to the point of turning down a job because they've realised that the organisation they're being offered a job with doesn't align with their personal values. And so, this is something that's not just a luxury anymore. Taking a quick look at this list. So these are the things, like I said, that young people are looking at when they're looking at applying or going to work for an organisation. Is there anything that you notice is missing from this list? Money. Yeah. Money actually doesn't make an appearance on this top, whatever it is up there, 8 or whatever. Of course, we need to pay the bills. We need to, pay the rent in this exorbitantly priced city of Sydney that we live in. But in terms of influencing work, these things are more influential. So really inspecting, well, what does flexibility look like? A quick graph for you so that it looks like I really know what I'm talking about. When we take a look across the bottom here of are there flexible working options and how long young people think they will be in a job? That's just one of those things on that list. And we're 55% more likely to, think that we're going to be around for between 3 and 5 years if we have flexible work arrangements. So, taking some time to really co-create your workplace rather than just stick the hierarchy and let it do its thing, but get people involved with the conversation. Flexible work arrangements shouldn't just be for the working mums and dads. Of course they need it, but also if flexible work arrangements is going to get some great outcomes from your other staff, why should we guard it off? And just a timely statistic for you with the election, 44% of millennials think business leaders are having a positive impact compared to only 17% of us thinking that politicians are. And I like this stat because it reinforces the importance that our businesses play and the role that they play in driving positive change. So thinking about all of these things actually sets businesses up to be real forces for good in our communities, and millennials believe that. We're leaving a little bit to be desired in the political front, but again, a different conversation. And lastly, how are you approaching progress in your organisation? A wonderful speaker, Dr. Jason Fox, once said, "Don't let your experience become your burden." And I know that that's probably a little bit of a cheeky quote to throw up on the screen, but what he talked about when he mentioned this was in times of stress and when the heat is on, we're making decisions, we often default to what we know, and we default to what we know will get results, and we default to what we feel comfortable with. But that's just no longer going to cut it. We are in such a rapidly changing world that sometimes being uncomfortable is our best asset. Another lens of progress is taking a look at how are you fostering leadership potential. And this graph, again, just talks about that loyalty piece. How long are we anticipating we'll stay at an organisation if we're being encouraged to develop and if we're being given the opportunity to inspect our own version of leadership and how we grow that. So progress doesn't just mean taking a look at those future trends like AI and bots and all the rest of it, but also at an individual level. Some of the skills that we really need within our businesses to progress are skills that you can start expecting of university grads. Given that the climate we're operating in is a climate where universities understand that they need to change, you can start expecting more from your graduates. Now, I'm not saying you can expect them all to walk in and be able to operate like fully experienced workers from the get-go, but we can start asking questions of them that we wouldn't normally. Having interns in your business isn't just about the coffee run and the photocopying anymore, but actually bringing them in to get that insight and to foster some new ways of thinking, so that these skills that in 2020 the World Economic Forum is saying that we're going to be hiring on actually start to make their way into our business and not just into a report that talks about our future employment strategy. Now, I'm going to whiz through this last bit. You heard a little bit at the beginning about my work. We're talking about what comes next. What does the future look like? And some of the ways we're teaching these skills, like look at our degree names: Bachelor of Creative Intelligence and Innovation, Technology and Innovation, Data Science and Innovation. We can expect more of our tertiary educations than we ever have before. But what does it mean for your business practically? So at UTS, we're spending a lot of time taking a look at, well, what does technology mean for humanity? Because technology is pushing us to be more human than ever before. We can teach a bot a lot of things. We can teach AI a lot of things. If you really want to distill life, you could distill your life down into the fact that it is just a repeated pattern of learned behaviour. But the thing is, that's not what it means to be a human, and therefore we will never be able to teach a robot how to be a human. So how do we take these elements of these technologies that can be quite scary? Artificial intelligence and machine learning will fundamentally change the way that we work, but it doesn't mean that it will fundamentally change what it means to be a human in our businesses. And I'm going to leave you with a couple of things. The first one is know what you stand for. Be really clear on the way that your business is interacting with humans and communicate it really transparently, really cleverly. Create a culture that allows people to shine in their own right. You will have young people who have some incredible ideas on the way that your business could propel forward. You also have young people that are really in tune with some of these technologies, and in fact, they've learnt some of them at university. And if your business isn't creating a space for them to shine, then those ideas are going to be kept in someone's brain, in the back corner of a cubicle somewhere. Young people do have the ability to contribute in decision-making conversations, and working out a way to do that respectfully of both them and of your other employees. It's not an easy task, but if you can manage that balance, I can guarantee you some really beautiful things will come out of the woodwork. And lastly, have more conversations about the things that scare you. If the concept of artificial intelligence and automation in your business makes you uncomfortable, talk about it until you're comfortable. Talk about it with the experts. Talk about it with the people in your business that have spent their time on a weekend reading the articles because they're fascinated by blockchain. Have conversations so that these things come to the front and they don't sit at the back, because the longer something sits in the darkness, the more scary it becomes. So identify the things that frighten you about this future of work and drag them out into the light. Have conversations about them, because the future is coming, but it's friendly. And we can use all of these things to create businesses that are really beautifully human. So thanks, it's been such a pleasure this morning.
Thanks, Rhi. Yeah, those technology briefs I just think are going to get more and more common in the next few years. So I think Rhi's a great choice for those. I found the gift for the feedback forms. So we have 3 of these. Nice didgeridoo waterproof bag. Take it anywhere, and it's got champagne inside. So if you can fill out your feedback forms, that'd be very much appreciated. So we have 2 event partners with us today. Firstly, we have AV1. And we've got Keith and Keelan and the team at the back there. They've been friends of ours since I first started. I remember having a chat with them 4 or 5 years ago and going, I'm going to do a showcase one day and you guys are going to help me. So thanks for helping out, guys. Thank you, yeah. and Dave. It seems like everyone who walked in the room this morning knew who Dave was. So it turns out we've got a lot of mutual clients. One in particular who just had a 4,000 delegate conference on the Gold Coast with a live cross interview with a speaker in New York, which I didn't get any phone calls, so I'm sure it went seamlessly. But they rave about you guys, so I think that speaks volumes. I also accidentally sometimes get sent Keith's emails, and when that happened, someone was asking what time I was bumping in. I didn't know what that meant, but. And of course, we have the Hard Rock Cafe. So I've also coincidentally had a long-term relationship with the Hard Rock. Dave Ryan, the general manager here, who's going to say a few words. I've known Dave for about 15 years since I worked in a restaurant in Dublin many years ago, and we play on a soccer team every Sunday, or we try to. And I just thought a few months ago, Dave and I were chatting, that I didn't know they held conferences and events in this space. So I thought, well, what a great way on the door of the CBD to show some event planners a potential new space. So I'll welcome up Dave, and just to remind Dave that I actually worked at the Hard Rock about many years ago for 6 weeks, and I was a really good waiter, Dave. Yeah, I was a better waiter than I was an MC. So please welcome Dave Ryan.
Good morning, everybody. We won't take up too much valuable time from these wonderful speakers that Keith have assembled this morning. As Keith said, I'm Dave Ryan, the General Manager here at Hard Rock Cafe. This is Jess Logan, Head of our Sales and Events team. We just want to welcome you all here, especially making a big effort on this gloomy Sydney morning, unfortunately. But we naturally just want to showcase the venue as well, because we've got multiple function rooms and spaces that you guys can have a look around after the showcase itself. Naturally, we've got the Jimi Hendrix room, which we call for the iconic picture of Jimi Hendrix at the back bar there. We've got our main dining behind us. We've got a private dining room outside that seats probably about 40 people. And then we've got full venues that people come along and let you do a buyout. So on your feedback forms, if you do want any more information about any functions or events, please come and see myself or Jess, or contact us at any stage over the next few days or few weeks. We'd be delighted to speak to you and see what we can offer you as well, and hopefully get some new partners, which would be great. But again, thank you very much for coming. Going to pass back over to Keith and hopefully see our next speaker up. But thank you again.
Thanks, Davo. So I wrote down here that this is usually when you go to events like this, and the MC might make a couple of funny jokes about being in events or being in conferences. I'm not an MC. I'm not that funny. So I just thought I'd show a couple of photos I saw on Instagram about event planning. An individual that is constantly worrying, a miracle worker, so I know that well. And then the other one was event planner, someone who does precision guesswork based on unreliable data provided by those of questionable knowledge. So I can also relate to that from some of the briefs. Cool. Our third speaker is Mykel Dixon. Mykel, I've known the least out of the four speakers. We only met about a year and a half ago, and he's going to speak about the future belongs to the artists. I just thought, instead of doing an intro for Mike, hands up if anyone watched that video. We sent out the little teaser video. Cool, about 10, 15 of you. Cool. So I thought we'd let the video of Mike introduce himself. So we'll play the video.
All right. Are we on? Maybe? Yes? You hear me? Tuesday morning, Saturday night. Beers are on Keith. Who's up for it? Who's in? Actually, we need a mead or something warm. I had my jacket on the whole way up the back here. Maybe I'll kick things off with this kind of vibe. So I want to talk about creativity today, folks. I'm not going to talk too much about why I want to talk about creativity, because we get it, don't we? The world, it's happening, it's changing. Rhiannon talked about a lot of awesome stuff there. I'll give you that chord to begin with, just because it's a nice chord. That's also a nice chord. Do we like that sound? Or we got more of a piano sound? We're happy with the Rhodes. It's a co-created experience. We're in this together. So I want to talk about creativity. I don't have 40 minutes of content. I've got about a minute, so I'm going to pad it out for another 19. No, really. That's a lie. I want to talk about creativity. And I want to make a case for this being the priority every single one of us needs to make in our lives, in our professional lives, in our personal lives, with our kids, with our relationships, everything we do. Rhiannon touched on this. I want to drill down into it. This was the World Economic Forum. They placed creativity as the 10th most important skill back in 2015. They thought it would climb to number 3 by 2020. Above it, complex problem solving and critical thinking, same thing. Thinking differently about the challenges that we're facing, about how to navigate this uncertain terrain, how to rock and roll through it. McKinsey has come up with a new creativity index where they've determined how to measure creative companies, and the companies that rate highly on this index vastly outperform their peers, their competitors, in 2 key metrics, one being an appetite and an aptitude for innovation, and the other being shareholder return, creativity, cold hard cash. IBM interviewed 1,000 CEOs right around the world. They unanimously agreed creativity is the number 1 skill they look for in a new hire. Have I sold you on this yet? You down with this whole creative game? There's no better time to be a creative. Someone like me that studied jazz and can do that stuff. This is like golden era. Creatives have been bringing home the wooden spoon for decades. Down here, what? Don't understand them. Baby, we made the finals. This is championship time. But this is not just exciting for me, for people that have a background in the arts entertainment sector. This is exciting for all of us, for every single one of us, because finally, at last, I know you're with me on this, we all get to step into, to own, to embody and express the artists we were born to be. You feel that? Who wants to go? I'll give you my shirt. It's easy to do in this shirt. Not everyone feels this way. Adobe did the largest ever study of its kind a couple of years ago. It's called State of Create. They found 3/4 of this room, 75% of us, just feel like we're not living up to our creative potential. But 80% of us feel as though our work is changing in such a way that we need to be more creative with what we're doing. Don't really feel like we're living up to our creativity. No, we need to. 80% of us, again, feel that despite the company, the C-suite, the leaders, whoever's saying, we need you to innovate, but don't you dare innovate. We want you to be creative, but still valuing productivity over creativity. Don't really feel that creative. No, I need to be. Company still values getting things done over doing things differently. And this, my friends, is what we call a recipe for irrelevance. This is where you're cruising down the highway, and the favourite track is playing. It's Baby Shark, and you wind in your hair, and you're driving in reverse. Has anyone got young kids? Baby Shark. I can't stop singing it, man. It's just in me, like Baby Shark. Da, 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 da. That's going to be the next 15 minutes. We're just going to sing that together, Baby Shark. Of course we would get here. Of course we've arrived at this place where we have this gap, this crisis, because every single one of us was born into an industrialized world. Every single one of us in this room was schooled by an education system that taught us to be compliant, to conform, to fit in, to speak only when spoken to. And this is no disrespect to our educators or to our schools, to the system. Love them, doing amazing work. But we learnt how to parrot information back. It was rote learning, it was memorized, that kind of stuff. We've all gone through that. There's been an impact. And then we got into the world of work, and we learned quickly what to wear, how to look like them, how to say the right thing at the right time, which kind of behind to kiss to get ahead. Totally worked. Nothing wrong with it. That worked in that time. The game has changed. Can I get a little glass of water? I might get myself a glass of water. The game has changed, guys. What are we going to do about it? I'll get you to bring it down, and when you bring it down, let's applaud Romy like she's never been applauded before in her whole life. Ready? Oh my God, come on. Wow, thank you so much. This is incredible. Romy, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. What did you do to that? That's incredible. Of course we got here. Even culturally, the last couple of 100 years, we've favoured a lens of logic and reason, of science, as opposed to emotion, intuition, or art. We tended to value logic and science as this vehicle for progress. If you can't measure it, it doesn't matter. Who's heard that? Whereas the touchy-feely stuff, the intuitive, the sensory, the aesthetic, the emotive, it's decoration, it's entertainment. Do that on the weekend with the kids. It was the great Einstein himself. You ever heard of him? Cool guy. He said, if what is being experienced is expressed through a lens of logic and reason, we call that science. If that same thing being experienced is expressed through a lens of emotion and intuition, we call it art. Two people look at the sun. One writes a paper on it, one writes a song about it. There's room for both, and now more than ever we need both. And we don't need both as in the creative department and the IT, finance and marketing. We need both in us. We need to swing this pendulum from whichever side you tend to favour more into the centre, just so we have a wider reach, a wider sphere that we can draw on to make choices to deal with these challenges that are happening in our life. Cool, right? Get to be touchy-feely at work. Get to wear shirts like this. This is the vibe now. It's a competitive advantage, clearly. I want to share another piece of research with you that I think it's just beautiful. Has anyone heard of a guy called George Land? So he was a scientist back in the 60s. He was a researcher. And there was another guy called JFK. Has anyone heard of him? So 61 it was, and he's standing at the podium. All right, we're going on the moon. And everyone behind JFK went, dude, what? Says who? Yeah, you'll figure it out. We're going on the moon, everyone. We can do it. How are we going to do that? They got this guy called George. George devised a test, a very effective test, that found the boldest, brightest, most brilliant minds in the country. We know how that went. Astrophysicists, chemists, engineers, physicists, whatever it is. We got to the moon. Unless you're a flat earther. You don't believe that kind of thing. Those numbers are growing, by the way. Respect. We're into diversity and inclusion here. So if you don't, we didn't get to the moon. Cool. For argument's sake, let's say we did. We get to the moon, fantastic. We come back down, high-fiving, George is loving it. A couple of years goes by and he's all kind of, what am I supposed to do now? I've still got that test. Why don't I try it on a bunch of 5-year-olds? Get 1,000 5-year-old kids, everyday kids. Grubby knees, snotty noses. This is not NASA School for the Gifted, everyday kids. Doing the same test that found the boldest, brightest, most brilliant minds in the country that got us to the moon, if you believe that kind of thing. Have a guess the percentage out of 100 of people, of kids, were deemed to be creative geniuses on the same, vein as these scientists. Have a guess. Shout it out. 80? 70? This is us, remember? Whoa! 98%. There's about 100 people in this room, so all but 2 of us. Keith and... So effective was this test, George thought, why don't I make this a longitudinal study? Check in 5 years later, same group of kids, same test. Have a guess at the percentage. 70? 50? Ouch. This is us, remember? What happens at 5? We go to school. Same focus group of kids. Now they're teens. They're smoking ciggies behind the gym. It's first kiss. Ouch. This is not NASA School for the Gifted. He did one more at 30. Have a guess. Minus? No faith in humanity. I love it. Ouch. Yeah, pretty close. This is what we're dealing with. George went on to say, non-creative behaviour is learned. The research is conclusive. Non-creative behaviour is learned. You are biologically designed to be creative. You are physiologically designed, apart from Keith and someone else, to be wildly creative. It's part of who we are, which is so beautiful about where we're standing in this point in time. Life happened, cool. We had to go to school and do that stuff, and it made us a particular way to deal with a particular world at that time. World went and changed behind our back, and now recovering, reclaiming, rediscovering our creativity, that essence in us, is not something we have to do. It's not another thing on the list. It's not a cold shower. I've got to fucking exercise. I've got to do a cold shower. And now I've got to be creative too. I'm never going to another showcase again. The list just gets longer. It's not about that. The beautiful part about this is it's about remembering and surrendering to who you've always been. It's not about becoming anything else. It's leaning back into it. Letting go of a bit of stuff, allowing it to emerge. So much more empowering, am I right? Sounds good, Mike. Whatever, dude, in theory. But how do I really find my way back? We can look to the people that never really lost it. The people that have somehow eked out a living by creating value using their creativity. Who am I talking about? Have a guess. Musos, yeah. Dancers, artists, poets, filmmakers. Somehow made a living. Not a very good one, which is why I'm here. But still, what can we learn from them? We look to the military, we've looked at high-performance athletes, we've looked at neuroscience, we've looked at all these wonderful things to give ourselves an advantage, an edge. What can we learn from the arts? What can we steal, rip off, borrow, blend, bastardise from what they're doing and reapply it in our work? Sound good? So I'll give you two little frames, two lenses to approach your work through. What am I doing with time here? Everyone's cool with my... We're just hanging, having a conversation? Not too formal today. It's good. I want to talk about art as an attitude. How do you put on that artistic lens and bring that to your work? Artists know that feeling's the new thinking. Experience is everything. You're event planners, event organisers. You know this better than anyone. It's all about the experience, am I right? I do that too. That's my throwback to the rock and roll days. I can't shake it. Am I right, Sydney? How you feeling, Sydney? Woo! Just won't leave me. So there's a place in the UK called Secret Cinemas. Anyone heard of it? Yeah. Cool. So you get that. So they disrupted the way we watch film. How do you disrupt the way we watch film? You just sit in a dark thing. You have popcorn this big. You have a Coke like that. Well, with Secret Cinema, you get a ticket to the show. You're not sure what you're going to see yet. It's months in advance. You line up in this dilapidated warehouse in the middle of Manchester with all these people. Wonder what we're going to see. You walk into the film, and for 3 hours before the film, you're in the film. So the kid is a patron, and the Imperial Guard guy, he's an actor. So this is Star Wars. So you're in Star Wars, like they've made the whole set. Wow. And then you sit down and watch it together. They've done 1984. They've done Back to the Future. And Marty McFly cruises around on the skateboard. They've done the Shawshank Redemption. And the escape route is optional. You don't have to go on the... Remember that? Shawshank Redemption? It's the poo shoot is what I'm talking about. We go out of the sewage. Another UK outfit. Who knew? Creativity's alive and well in the UK. Called Black Tomato. They have an offering called Get Lost. What do you think that offering is? Starting at $22,000. You work with a consultant. You share about your relationship with your father and your life and what's been going on at work and who you are and what you like for breakfast. They put together a proposal. It's October, February 3rd. People will jump up and get you, take you to the airport. You're then dropped on a helicopter in the northern Atacama Desert of Chile. You've got a GPS, a backpack, bottle of water. We'll see you in a week. Wow. Experience, this is what people want. They're paying handsomely for experiences. There's a little bakery in Melbourne called Loon. People line up at 4:30 a.m. to get a croissant from this bakery in the middle of winter. Because it's the experience, it's the croissant. Yeah, but you got to do it. Sometimes it goes too far. This is a deconstructed Bunnings sausage. Retailed at $14 or $15. Yeah, we're pretty hipster down in Melbourne, you know. This is next level hipster. Experience is everything. Who's never played a piano before? Who's never played an instrument? Hands up. Great. Come on down. You and me. Yeah, come on down. All right. So we're going to do something now. Now you're going to tune in, okay?
Okay.
Now you're going to see how you go with that. And you're just going to lock into your artistic, essence and who you are. And really think about what you want to create for everyone today, what you want to leave them with. And you're just going to express yourself on the black notes. Just
That's the black.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, just the black keys, yeah.
Are you going to do it too?
No, you just express yourself. I'm just here in a supportive role. She's just... Yeah, keep going. Yeah, keep going. Yeah, keep going. Oh yeah, I feel where you're going with this. Ooh. It's a bit early for that, but sure, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Wow. Big round of applause. Come on, give it up. Thank you. That was gorgeous. Wow. I thought it was cold, but things are heating up in this joint. What do? We just created an experience. Rather than me talking about experiences, you guys are designing experiences every day. I used what I do, who I am, my life story, the creativity of who I am to draw you in, make you the hero of the story. You're out of your comfort zone a little bit, doing something you've never done before. But then I'm there to support you and create an experience for you. And you and I, we will never forget that as long as we live, I know. Wow, because that was a moment. But this is what artists do. They create experiences. How long have I got? Am I still... It's finish? Oh. Okay, power ending. Should we leave it at that? Was that a good ending? Because I've got about... Yeah, I really messed up there. I've got hours to go. No. That was awesome. Thank you for that. Honestly, guys, there is... I mean this. Okay? This is my power thing. I am a motivational speaker. I love motivating people. Forget about the showcase. Forget about all of this stuff. Think about you. Think about your kids. Think about your future. You've got a unique way of seeing the world that has been given to you from the experiences that you've had. No one else has had them. No one else will. That innate, authentic way of perceiving the world and processing it and then expressing it, we need that. We need that as a global community. We need that in our organisations, in our neighbourhoods. We need that at the pub. We just want your full self-expression. And when you do that, when you're courageous enough just to show little bits around the edges, you carve a path for other people to start doing the same. And then we got a world that looks like this. You know what I mean? Who doesn't want that? And we want your brand of it, your unique version, your creative essence, not like them, just yours, So thank you. What a gift it was hanging out with you guys. I appreciate it. I'll see you all soon. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Mike. I know it's difficult to have a creative genius like Mike only up there for 18 minutes, which turned into 21. 2% my arse. Just a reminder, feedback forms. Once we finish, we'll collect those. Great prize. Love to know your thoughts. But actually, I think that's all we have got time for. So thanks for coming. I'm only joking. That's me being creative, by the way. I tried to be. It's also me having a bit of a dig at the last speaker, who's a good friend of mine. So we have last, but of course not least, Samantha Gash. I first met Samantha about literally 2 months after I started Inspire. We got referred to each other by another speaker. And I went and saw a screening of a documentary that she was in at Narrabeen Surf Club called Desert Runners. Has anyone seen Desert Runners documentary? Anyone here? No? Okay. It's really good. You should check it out. And then a few months after that, Sam then said, I'm speaking at this event. I'd love for you to come along and check it out. So I said, okay, great. So I went and saw Sam speak. She came off stage and she was like, how did I go? I went, you were good. You were a 5 out of 10. And she was like, what? And I said, yeah, you were a 5 out of 10. And then I saw Sam then speak every, say, 4 or 5 months after that, and she just got better and better and better. And she's now literally probably one of the most in-demand speakers in the country. Along the way, we've become great friends, and I'm delighted to be going to her and her fiance's wedding at the end of the year. So in a nutshell, Samantha is an endurance athlete and a social entrepreneur. She's run across deserts in Chile, China, Egypt, and Antarctica, and to the mountains of Nepal, New Zealand, and South Africa and India. In 2016, she completed a 3,253 kilometre 70-day run from the west to the east of India as an ambassador for World Vision. And when she did that run, she raised over $150,000 for children in those communities. The keynote I most book Samantha for is called Life Beyond the Comfort Zone, which is an awesome power-packed 45 minutes. But to give it to us in 18 to 19, please welcome Samantha Gash.
Well, I clearly didn't wear these shoes when I was out running across the deserts. You know, that is a small snapshot into the life of an endurance athlete. It's rarely glamorous, and it's nearly always about the why that you put yourself in that scenario that determines if you get to the finishing line. Keith's right. We met 5 years ago, and I was a little shaky to say. But the thing is, when you repeatedly do something that you love, incrementally, when you work at it and you're willing to take advice and critique, you can get better and better. When I used to share my tales from the trails, I did things quite chronologically. I would try and explain what it was like to run 4 250-kilometre desert ultramarathons through the hottest, coldest, driest and windiest deserts on Earth. In these races, you have to carry everything that you need to survive for the 250 kilometres of each race. So for me, I'm on the shorter side of life. Without these heels, I'm 4 foot 11.5. That 0.5 is really important. I don't want to sell myself short. So on the day one of these races, before I've eaten any of my food, I'm carrying about 25% of my body weight on my back. And I feel like that's one of the biggest challenges for me in these races. After that, I went to northern India. It's a race called La Ultra the High, and it was 222 kilometres non-stop. The race peaked at 6,000 metres above sea level. Has anyone spent time at high altitude before? Yeah, for those who haven't spent time at high altitude actually running, I want you to imagine a couple of pairs of dirty socks in your mouth, and you're trying to run. Every footstep that you take is laboured, it's incredibly challenging, there's pollution all around, and it's an incredibly burdensome feeling to experience. Afterwards, I wanted to do something a little bit closer to home. I went to Australia's iconic Simpson Desert and I ran 379 kilometres with only taking 2 20-minute stops. It took me 3 days, 14 hours and 28 minutes. You might think I'm crazy, like why did she run non-stop? And there's 2 reasons for it. Number one is I was trying to raise funds for an education program in Australia's Indigenous communities. And I was really early into this endurance career. And to be honest, endurance running in Australia is a pretty niche sport, so it's hard to kind of gather attention. And so I knew if I did it non-stop, I might get some media attention. I'd be able to share the story to a wider audience and raise more money. The other reason is that I was a graduate lawyer at Baker & McKenzie at the time, and I hadn't accrued any annual leave days. So I had to condense the experience to the shortest number of days to actually pull it off. And then the last thing is I did a 2,000 kilometre run across South Africa's Freedom Trail. This run, I didn't see a road for the entire month. So for 32 days, I did not encounter a road once. I was running with a lady who was 52 years of age. We actually only met just before we started the run, which is interesting. Clearly, it's very hard to find someone who, wants to run across a country with you. So I had to find someone from the UK. But as I said, she was 52. And what I was amazed by is, the limitations we sometimes create on ourselves of what we can do at certain ages. I was half her age, and I've got to say, for the majority of it, she was far stronger than me. Many times we were, scaling up summits. We were pushing through bamboo that was 6 foot tall. We were wading through water that was, waist high. But we were trying to raise funds for the high cost of feminine hygiene products for women in sub-Saharan Africa. And that link for girls dropping out of school because they, miss school for 4 to 5 days when they have their periods. They get so disconnected that they no longer, want to be a part of that education process. So that's kind of like what I've done. When you look at those images, who here thinks that, the stats, the high-def images almost make ultra running seem a little bit attractive? A little bit impressive? Anyone kind of... Impressive. You know what? That's the best I can give you. That's the absolute best. That is my highlights reel. And like everything that we so often choose to share, it doesn't display the mundane, it doesn't show the sacrifice, and I'm just going to get to the real guts of it. Because in 2016, I ran from the west to the east of India. It was a 77-day journey where not one day went to plan. But the harder journey was the 2 years of preparation to actually get to the start line. So the video that I'm showing you is this fast track, and I think what it shows to me is what human beings are capable of when we're willing to go beyond our comfort zone. Finished in town, which sucks, to be honest. As a runner, it's not pleasant. There's these little moments and I'm like, holy shit. How am I going to do this? Yeah, it's been rough. 12 hours, 10 hours. Yeah, I feel like I'm cooking on the inside. My stomach is really, really sore. People would normally be in bed after what I went through last night, not going out for another 60k. This isn't an elite sport. This is all mind. Do it because you want to and you believe in it. It's gonna hurt. Who's here watching that and they just can't help but ask, why? I mean, why would this girl voluntarily choose to put herself in this, situation of, pain? It's the first question I'm asked every single time I do an interview, the first time I'm asked every time after I show something like that. And I've had to think about it, and for me, the question isn't why, and the answer certainly isn't, why not? because I'm actually not driven by the why nots of the world, but I'm actually really driven by the what if. What if I didn't make the decision to do something different than what I knew? 10 years ago, my life looked very, very different. And if you just indulge me for a second, if you close your eyes, I want you to try and take yourself back to the version of you 10 years ago. Think about, who were the people in your life at that time? What job were you in? When you got up in the morning, what were the things that actually fired you up to start your day? Did you have a purpose then? Did you even know what a purpose was? Open your eyes and raise your hand if the version of you 10 years ago was very different than who you are today. And that is completely normal. In fact, it's how it should be. As human beings, we are designed to grow. And this is me 10 years ago, clearly embracing the goth part of my life. 10 years ago, I graduated from a double degree in performing arts and law. I had a graduate offer at Baker & McKenzie, the largest international law firm in the world. I was living in this warehouse converted apartment in what I thought was the best street of inner city Melbourne. It's Oxford Street. It's opposite the best coffee place, Proud Mary. You guys might want to write that down when you head to Melbourne to try what real coffee tastes like. And I was also engaged to a doctor. You could be thinking that I was killing it at life. But what I knew deep down, if I actually really asked myself, is that I never, ever did something when I didn't know what the outcome would be. So on the face of it, it looked like I was, succeeding at all these goals. I was doing big things and I was going to be a lawyer. My parents were so proud. But if I wasn't sure of the outcome, if it was exposed me for any of my vulnerabilities or my weaknesses, I would always run away from it. So I had this moments life is going to look really boring if I can't be willing to try something new. And there's this saying that if you want something that you've never had, you've actually got to do something that you've never done. And so I asked myself that question. I was like, do something that fears you, that you're fearful of. And I used to tell myself a lot of stories as a kid. And one of the narratives that I always told myself is that I was shit at sport. I was the kid that was uncoordinated, incredibly short, uncool, and I was the last to be picked in sporting teams all the time. If the teacher said we're choosing teams for a schoolyard pick, which is where the teacher picks 2 leaders, they pick their team one at a time, perceived strongest, most popular student, to perceived weakest, least popular student, I just would want to be invisible on that line. And when I was the last kid not chosen, because there was an odd number of kids in the class, and I had that real honour of selecting my own team, I just felt like I didn't belong. And it was embarrassing because your abilities in sport, particularly in Australia, can play this huge role in your social currency in the schoolyard. So here, I decided to do a marathon. It was a massive leap for me because I had never even run a 5K fun run. The idea of running wasn't particularly fun for me. So I had no one in my life who was training for a marathon. And so I downloaded this 18-week training program online, the internet, the oracle of all information. And I had a new mantra, which was what you lack in physical experience, you can make up for with your methodical application to that training program. It's the first time in my life that I had actually applied myself to something on a physical nature. And has anyone run a marathon here? Yep, okay, that's impressive. There's more than 1% of the room, and there's 1% of the world's population who will run a marathon in their lifetime. So, got a couple of extraordinary people in this room. And you guys all know, doing a marathon, you typically have 3, maybe 4 training runs during the week. They're shorter in duration, but they're more intense in the energy output you put. On the weekend, you have what's called the long run. As you would imagine, that long run gets progressively longer the closer you get to running the marathon. The first time I ran a half marathon in training, it was like I was doing less loops around the botanical gardens because I have no sense of direction, so I didn't want to get lost. And it was Melbourne winter, it was freezing cold, it was raining, no surprise there. I got home, I jumped in bed, and I ate an entire pack of salt vinegar chips, like a large 2,000 calorie pack of salt vinegar chips, feeling like I deserved every morsel crumb in those chips. And I remember thinking, I've never felt not just physically this strong before, I've never felt mentally this strong. I've gone from not even thinking a half marathon was in my mental vocabulary to finishing it and kind of going, I'm excited about what's next. And I had never felt that feeling of excitement for the unknown. And race day comes. The only goal that I shared with, the universe is that I wanted to run under, I wanted to finish the run. But the reality was I actually wanted to get under 4 hours. And as the gun went off, I just pushed really hard, got to 32 kilometres. I'd never run 32 Ks before. And what do you think happened to me at 32 Ks? Hit the wall, exactly. Pull. It's like your entire body feels like lead. From your feet to your calves, your quads, core, torso, everything feels awful. And the only reason I got to the finishing line is I had a friend with me, and she basically dragged me physically through the final 10Ks. And trust me, gravel rash, it's a real thing. Got to the finishing line, I felt incredible. My biggest takeaway from it, though, was my default setting is to quit when I'm in the unknown. And whilst running a marathon is a great thing, it's nowhere near like the life's challenges that are going to be thrown my way. And so I went onto the internet and I typed in world's toughest endurance race, and this is what I found.
They are the driest, windiest, hottest, and coldest deserts on Earth. 4 hostile environments on 4 different continents. These remote locations serve as the proving grounds for the ultramarathon series rated by Time magazine as one of the most challenging endurance competitions in the world, Racing the Planet's 4 Desert Series.
It's 100 degrees out, the wind is blowing, looks like someone's got a hair dry on your face.
Dehydration is immediate big issue today.
Can't breathe too good.
These rough country foot races, each covering over 150 miles, are the equivalent of running 6 marathons in 5 days over extreme and diverse terrain, with temperatures ranging from over 120 degrees Fahrenheit to a bone-chilling 30 degrees below zero. Those willing to take on these unforgiving deserts will attempt to run, walk, or crawl toward the finish line, carrying everything they need to survive: clothes, food, medical supplies, sleep gear, in a pack on their backs.
Every muscle in my body is aching.
I'm very close to my pain barrier.
It's the kind of experience destined to provide the thrill or the heartbreak of a lifetime.
So obviously, this is a very natural progression from a near-failed marathon experience. I was definitely out of my depth, but when I started to kind of research how to train for something like this, what I wanted to believe is that I could do it. And so one strategy that I've always thought is that if you stand on the shoulders of giants, you can cut time dramatically. Never before have we had such access to, thought-provoking information from industry leaders all across the board, information that we can actually utilise for our human potential and peak performance. In fact, when I was researching big things that people had done to demystify the challenge, I came across these 3 guys. And a couple of years prior, they had run the entire length of the Sahara Desert. That's 7,000 kilometres. They ran every single day without taking a day off, averaging 70 kilometres per day. And the 3 of them stuck together. One of the gentlemen in that group is called Ray Zahab, and he says that the challenge of ultra running is 90% mental, and the other 10%, well, it's all in your head. And I love this because it's about the mind. The mind is a starting point that determines what the next step is. If your mind is filled with confidence, if belief, even if you've got to fake it till you make it, then you do the next steps to get yourself prepared to create a strategy to actually put yourself in the game. And so, typically, what do I share? I share the baptism of fire mental strategies that I learned through doing those experiences. I talk about the idea of redefining failure. I talk about this concept of relentless forward motion, where slow progress is still progress. And then I talk about the idea of strategic vulnerability. And I want to finish on this concept for you because so often when you're doing these races, you think you have to have this wall, this armour of toughness in order to achieve something that's so big. There's conflict, there's chaos all around you, and so you don't want to show vulnerability. I get to the second race of the series, which is the Gobi Desert. It's the windiest desert in China. And this girl came up to me, and her name was Lisa Tamady. And she goes, I reckon we should run the long stage together on day 5. And that was 100 kilometres in distance. It was double the distance of what I'd ever run before. And I had 2 thoughts going through my head. The first thought was this girl is my version of a celebrity. She's run the entire length of New Zealand last year. She'd done over 100 ultra marathons. I'm going to do whatever it takes to stick with her, and then I'm going to cross the finishing line with her, sing Kumbaya. It was like this vision. The other side of me was I'm 24, I'm in a race. I want to beat this girl for the podium position. I'm going to stick with her to the end, and then I'm going to burn her off. This is what happened 12 hours into that day.
we're hitting for 75 k's and the sun's come out and it's just fucking ridiculous. Excuse my French. Oh. And we're both broken down a little bit. But we're going to get there. Where is it? I don't know about it. It's not 11 k's like this.
Is it 10 or 11?
Yeah.
Sarah's gonna sit there.
Where?
Down to the left.
Oh.
10.
Yeah.
Yep. It just got really longer than 11 kilometers.
You did really good. You're in the shade over there. And we'll set your feet up, huh? Just hold on a second. I'm trying to you first, yeah. You did really good, guys. Oh. You okay? Are you still lightheaded?
A little bit, but I'll be okay.
But then take it easy, eh?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, don't kill yourselves. You're the top 2 girls, so.
It really hurts. Okay, here's the most attractive running form you've ever seen. So ultra running has taught me a bunch of things. It's taught me a lot about my natural default settings, my strengths, my weaknesses, how I work together in teams. When you're planning big things, big events, there's that preparation phase. You get the spreadsheets out, the risk mitigation, the due diligence. I love that stage. That's naturally what I'm inclined to be good at. But what I have struggled at is that in execution mode, when things aren't going to plan, I've really struggled to say to myself, it's not working. You've got to pivot. The most successful organisations, successful leaders, are ones who are able to drop their ego and pivot constantly to reflect the circumstances that are actually in front of them right there. So, in these races, things never go to plan. In that race, all the checkpoint markers just disappeared. Lisa and I are scanning the horizon trying to find them, and all we find is a little girl with a backpack on with all the pink markers stuffed in them. 100k stage turned to 110k stage, and the temperature reached 52 degrees. It's how you deal with those moments and how you work with the people around you that actually define what happens. Lisa was the pillar of strength that I relied upon the entire day. I was definitely battling. But the most powerful moment for us in that race is actually when she threw herself into the sand dunes with 5k's to go and said, I don't think we're going to get out of here alive. And I wiped the vomit that I had with my face with one hand, and I grabbed her hand with the other, and I was like, don't worry, we can do this. If I could put a firecracker up my bum. I've been the follower the entire day. She was the leader. I didn't need to do anything. But in fact, I was going further and further behind. And so I want to finish with this. Good leaders are strong, but great leaders are strong and vulnerable. When we want to do big things, when we want to go to the edge of the world, what takes people there is when they trust us. Vulnerability is a key way to ensure that people want to work with you and want to do great things out of your comfort zone. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sammy. Also, just want to wish Sam all the best. She's got a big gig tomorrow. She's speaking at TEDx Melbourne. So all the best for that tomorrow, Sam. Hope you nail it. Yeah, go on. To be honest, Sam has been really nervous and excited about TEDx for the last couple of months, but because it's been the day after today, I haven't really give a shit. But now, Sam, I wish you all the best tomorrow. You nail it. All right, we'll collect those feedback forms. Should have mentioned that they're double-sided if you haven't seen already. And Romy and the girls will collect them through when you finish them. And we've got 3 prizes to finish, and then we're nearly done.